This is TWiT.
Chrissy Teigan, the unofficial mayor of Twitter, is leaving town. She and John Legend, I didn't realize this, were tagged, what do they call it? Name dropped, name checked by QAnon. Apparently, the QAnon conspiracy thinks that she and John Legend are running a pedophile ring out of a pizzeria in Washington, D.C. Yes, it's Pizzagate. She has been abused, she says, on Twitter for years. 13.7 million followers. Twitter said she's the unofficial mayor of Twitter. She says, I'm leaving. It no longer serves me positively as it serves me negatively, and I think that's the right time to call something. She says she's been beat up. For years, I've taken so many small 2-follower count punches, that is by accounts that have only 2 followers. They're brand new, created just for abuse. At this point, I'm honestly deeply bruised. Blocked more than 1 million Twitter accounts last July. Deleted thousands of tweets. I know that, Kevin, I think you invested in Twitter very early on, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah. Big. Are you still a Twitter guy to support Twitter?
I mean, I know that I love Jack as a CEO, and I know that the challenges at the scale they're at are insanely complex. They're being attacked on so many different fronts.
Yeah, he was in Washington, D.C. this week. We'll talk about that. Yeah, testifying.
I wouldn't want to be running that piece of software. I think that's a product I wouldn't want to be in charge of, but I'm still a fan. I use it. I like the people that I follow, and I get a lot of value out of it as a user. But, just like you, Leo, I'm sure, and anybody else that uses it, I'm not sure how much you use it these days, but I get a lot of random people that will say things, and I just end up blocking them as well. It's just the nature of the beast.
Twitter put together a survey ostensibly to collect people's opinions on how they should handle these difficult political challenges. But I really think the real reason they created, we did it on Wednesday on This Week in Google. The real reason they created the survey was to show you how impossible their job is. When you take the survey, well, let me see if I can find it. They ask you, all right, he's a world leader, not in your country. He's using his official Twitter account, and he's saying something bad about a group in another country. Should he be banned? Should he be warned? Should we put a correction on the tweet? And you sit there and you read all these things, and it's like, I don't know what to do. I'll find the survey. Oh, it's down. It's gone. Oh well. I wanted to show you the survey, but I think it was very effective in demonstrating. Oh, there it was, by the way. I just closed it. I'll open it up again for you, John. Calling for public input on our approach to world leaders. And yet, I think the real reason they put this up is once you take it, you realize it's impossible. Who knows, Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was going to ask you what you found compelling about that survey.
Just how intractable the problem is. I wish it were still up. I guess they took it. It says starting March 19th. Yeah, I guess they only did it for a week. It closed Monday, April 12th. Had you seen it? Had you taken it?
I don't think that they care about the answer.
That's what my point was. They don't.
Right.
That they just wanted you to understand how impossible their job is.
Right. I don't think they care about my answer to that survey. I also think they don't care about capital T, capital A, the answer, right? Because the truth is that these platforms have undermined public health and safety in our country and in other countries. And there are ways to address those problems, but nobody has addressed them, not in a meaningful, substantive way for a very long time. And so the challenge now is that I had a conversation with some of the execs, 10 years ago. I didn't see how Twitter was going to earn the kind of revenue it was going to need to survive over the long term. And it seemed to me like there were alternative paths forward. But too often I hear from folks, we're just focused on the product. We just want to work on the product, and that's what we're doing. The problem is you can't just focus on the product. You also have to think about the next order impacts, because at some point, you could face a problem.
I have to say, ever since Twitter finally did the right thing with Trump's account, it's been nice and quiet around here. And it makes you wonder why they didn't do it for 4 years.
Because there were speech implications. There were all. I mean, it should not have gotten to that point, right? Because in waiting that long, now you're a platform, but you're also a platform with world leaders who are clearly. It would not have been easy to just shut off that pipeline at the beginning. I mean, because it escalated and it gotten. Yeah,
I understand. Initially, he's the president of the United States. We're going to give him a bully pulpit. He got elected. He deserves the right to free speech, although he said things that other people would have immediately been banned for.
Right, but you can't for 10 years say we're just a platform. We're not making editorial comments. We're not making comments on speech, and then deplatform the president of the United States, even though he is, was saying things.
Should they have
that were
done nothing?
Untrue. No, I mean, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying you don't want to be a company where you get to the position.
You want to be in that position, period. Yeah.
You don't want to have to make these decisions under duress. It's not good for your employees. Yeah. It's not good for the executives. You wind up having to make decisions for wrong reasons. My point is, well, before you get to that point, you need to be thinking smarter about your financials and about your long-term survivability and what makes you vulnerable and what makes, what parts of the business are brittle.
They should have been thinking ahead about what they were getting in themselves into. In other words,
I think it's pretty easy to say if you're starting something new today in hindsight. But if you look back on when Twitter was first getting out the ground, we were all. I remember some of my very first tweets just being like, "Hey, where are we all going to meet up at South by Southwest?" It was like let's just get together and hang out.
That's totally fine. But like 3 years post South by in I don't know, several years.
Yeah, but then. I was just going to say, then you had the fail whale, right? Because they couldn't scale it because they were just growing so fast. And so it wasn't like they were always behind in terms of the tech stack and always playing catch up, right? And then all of a sudden, politicians came online, hate speech came online. I just think it's a very, very tough challenge when you have literally millions of users joining per day. There are going to be a ton of bad actors in there. Like, how do you fix that? Like, I'm curious, Amy, what would you do to fix it?
So I don't want to say the year because I don't remember what year it was. If it was 2012, sometime between 2012 and 2014, I had this conversation with Ev, and the challenge is that you have to figure out a way. I mean, every company has to build risk modeling into their product process. It has to be part of the roadmap, because otherwise, you get to a place where you can no longer make the decisions that would have been easy a while ago. So by 2015, it was pretty obvious that there were bad actors using the platform as, and bots. Or maybe it was before then, because I was at State talking about this. But you want to be in a position where you've got some alternatives and contingencies.
I get that,
and I just don't think they did.
Yeah, but when you have, so back then they had Rails was falling over. They were trying to get Cassandra off the ground as a database structure. Cassandra was in its alpha. Like they couldn't even, how can you build anything to go after users when you can't even stand up?
There
your
were
own
more
database?
Immediate risk considerations
I hear you.
Than what 10 years from now a president of the United States might do on the platform. They couldn't keep their tech stack working.
Right.
I would say in the last 3 years they should have done a lot more because they did figure out all those problems. And fix all those problems.
Fail well's long gone. Yeah,
long gone.
But I think is that generally, Kevin, you work with a lot of startups. I don't think startups are thinking that way. They're hoping they can survive. They're just hoping they can get the minimum viable product working. They're not thinking, what are the risks down the road when we are
and
successful.
unfortunately, to Amy's point, sorry, Amy, I'll let you go. Sorry,
No, you go ahead.
didn't
You go
cut
ahead.
off.
Sorry, I keep interjecting. You go, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
I was just going to say that to your point, they need to be thinking about this from day one. And honestly, most entrepreneurs are thinking, how can I even get viral to begin with?
Right.
You know, how can I get those first million
Right.
users? They're not thinking about risk or what happens if this is 50 million people, 100 million people are using this product.
Right. So this is this is not me with a crystal ball using hindsight to say what they should have. Like, it's easy for me to now say what they should have done. I have been tracking this as one of the early users, and I've been tracking this for 13 years, 14 years. The point is that even in the fail well days, even when you're just trying to get the products to scale, even when you've got people coming onto the platform because it's exciting and there's all kinds of interesting things happening, somebody in the organization still needs to be in charge of doing the longer range forecasting. And
you said this, to be fair, I've known you to say this for years. The companies don't think strategically. And
they don't.
That's one of the things you really have long pushed for, is they have to start thinking strategically.
And I mean, if we want to stick within the
Medium's
Twitter
having the same
family,
problem. Yeah.
Medium's right. Why are they having that same problem? Because the financials don't work. Why do the financials don't work? So
Medium we should just say, for people who don't know, Medium just pivoted. Ev Williams, who founded Twitter, went off and founded Medium, which originally looked like just a blogging platform. But they decided that they wanted to have in-house journalistic publications so that they could charge a $5 a month subscription fee. And this week, Ev essentially laid everybody off. He didn't lay them off. He gave them buyouts and encouraged them to take off. But I think effectively, Medium has shuttered its journalistic arm, and they're just going to now be a blog platform again. And that's a pivot. Ev's known for his pivots. He's famous for his pivots. I don't know if it's failure.
No, so that's the other. So there's a couple of things. If you are running a company with the very long term in mind, and I don't know a lot of executives that do this well, you have to be operating across different time zones sort of simultaneously, meaning you have to have a strong sense of what you're doing in the farther future, like 10 years down the road, which feels pointless, but there are still data that you can track. And in the present, you have to make tactical decisions using data that you do have access to, and then strategy, and then shifting your vision on where you're headed. And you have to be able to recalibrate, and you have to be able to do this pretty regularly. The problem is that I think a lot of companies, you've got products separate, you've got executives looking at adoption cycles, you've certainly got investors looking at what probable adoption cycles look like, which are always slower than people think they should be. You try to build financial models to match those adoption cycles. And, all of these sort of things start to fall apart. Part of the reason is that I don't think people are taking in enough outside data. Like when they are looking at whether or not something could succeed and what the factors are, they're not using a big enough data set in there. And then there's a lot of teams that aren't doing this using data at all, or methodically at all. You just wind up with belief. It's fiat. Everybody gets really excited about something, and then that's that. And in the middle of all this, you need to have somebody who is asking some of these really difficult questions. And building a risk model doesn't need a month and a half. It sometimes just needs like a couple of hours to think things through. And if you and by the way, there are tools to do this. It's not like idle brainstorming. But if you identify that risk early enough in that could result from the normal cycle of product development, you mitigate that early and you turn that into a strategic advantage, or you deal with it, or at least you know that it's plausible on the horizon. And I think that sometimes people get very stuck in doing what they know how to do, especially if they came out of development or product space. And the rest of this work, given how little most companies and most people control outside, it's like, this is really challenging stuff to do, but you have to do it.